This conference
Oh,
will
of
now
course.
be
No.
recorded.
Yes, of course. Follow the agenda. I'm just saying when.
Okay, well, I just don't want them to, you know, be bored hanging out, waiting, because.
It's a great way to see your local government in action.
There you go. I know Gwen's not coming. I think. Oh, Gwen and Pam aren't coming. So it should be Stephanie and Bill. And I think that's it. And you know, the guests that we have. And Christine, right.
That's
She's
enough for a quorum then, if they become, oh, Christine will be here too.
Yeah. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Seems
Did you get outside? It was so beautiful today, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird how 32 feels warm?
When the sun is out, it's, you know,
I
and there's
know.
not a huge wind. I mean, we've had several really windy days, and so that just brings that wind chill down. So you're, unless it's a south wind, but we've had those north winds that, whoa, blow right through you.
And today there's actually some spring bird song already.
Right.
Yeah, the days are getting longer.
Isn't it amazing?
Yep. You know, I put a little lights on my front porch on a timer, and I do it before Christmas, and I set it for when it gets dark. And then this time of year, the lights go on and it's still light, and it makes me feel really happy.
Well, just at the solstice, my solar lights came on again. They as soon as it gets to a certain photo period, they turn on again, and then they'll turn off when the days get shorter. But it's really cool when they turn on. It's like, oh, we're over the hump.
Yeah, that's nice. Huh.
It is.
Well, it's nice now because after the second week, I think it's the second week in January, we start gaining in the morning too. So it's like 2-3 minutes a day. So it feels so much more if you're seeing the whole day.
I know.
Hello.
Right.
Hi there. Hi, Loretta, Steve, Christine, and Janet. It's Claudia Urson here.
All right.
Hi.
Hi.
We haven't begun the meeting yet, but
We're just yakking.
Claudia's my neighbor.
Okay.
Your neighbor on Varga? Do you live on Varga Road?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. That's such a pretty road. I love it.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah. I go to visit Deb Gagg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Down the
So
road.
do you walk the church Zering property?
You know, I haven't.
Oh, it's
but
gorgeous up there.
I know, I should.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
haven't been
Varga in itself with all the pastures and the big landscape, it's gorgeous.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I should. I had to go to Scotland today, and I stopped at, what is it? Allenbeck Wolf or something, Lake Marie. It was pretty. The lake was so quiet, but then it would boom every once in a while, you know, with the ice. It was really pretty.
So we're waiting for Bill and Stephanie, I think, right?
Yeah, and Tom, because our first, oh, there they are. All right. Good. And we were hoping to talk about the trash thing. Let me just say that I think all of you know that we switched back to the fourth Monday meeting because it seemed like that was a better option for us to make sure that we have it without having a conflict with other Zoom, because sometimes if there's too many Zooms, there's not enough space, whatever. So that's why initially we said third Monday, but then we went back to the fourth, which was actually the one that we had most of the time. It was just recently that we changed that.
Great. Do you know if we have any conflicts, any stand-in conflicts with other commissions?
No, except we will have a conflict next month, but Janet can mention that later because she's been in touch with that. But hi, Tom.
Hi, Loretta. How you doing?
Pretty good. Okay, I think let's get started now, because we have a pretty full agenda tonight, and so I wanted to start out. I talked with Pam, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but we decided to come up with a date because last time, or the time before maybe, we had talked about having just one day be a trash day. So, and have like one day be the trash day and a rain date, so that hopefully a whole bunch of residents can come out and it can be a really big event like it sort of was the first time we did it. I think there were many people who helped out, and I'm aware that there are people who do clean their roads but don't necessarily let us know, or don't do it right on that day. But it doesn't seem to be working if we have a whole bunch of days. So that's where we're coming from. And we came up with March 19th, which is a Saturday, and the rain date would be March 26th. So I had invited Tom King, who is with the ABA, Ashford Business Association, to chat it just a little bit with us about any ideas we could come up with back and forth to have the businesses in Ashford either sponsor us or put up some advertising, put up a sign. When Ian Preston sort of helped us out, he made signs that said, you know, Ashford Cleanup Day or whatever, and had his logo on it. So it was also a way for him to have advertising. And he also donated vests and bags and water. And he really did a good job of really supporting the town. And at least, even if people didn't come, they saw the signs up that we have this annual trash pickup time. So I think that worked out very well. And we, Pam also contacted or left a message for a committee at E.O. Smith to see if we can encourage some of the high school students to come out and do some cleanup for us and get some credit, extracurricular activity credit for their school. So that might encourage them to do that. We did have 3 people come a couple of years ago from E.O. Smith, and that worked out because they have a lot of energy and they don't get tired at all. So it's just like, oh, let's do this for a little while. So we usually think about in terms of like a couple hours, you know, and set up a time like 9 to 12 or something. But it's not, people don't have to be out there for 3 hours, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. So that's about where we stand on that. And I just wanted to pick your brains a little bit, Tom, about how we can work together. You know, I think it's always good when we get different groups in town working with each other. And I know you're very involved in cleaning up the roads. And I know a couple times I saw your wife there on James Road. So,
Yeah.
you know, it is something I think that a lot more people than we know of do. But we want to sort of make this be a townwide event, so that people know this is happening and can stop and join us. I will say that whenever I've done it, people come by, stop and thank me. And every single time somebody goes by and picks up trash afterwards, because we just leave it by the side of the road. And then the agreement is that the town will pick it up that Monday. But that never happens because people on their way to the dump just stop, you know, throw the bag in their truck and go off to the dump. So there is many ways that we're being assisted by this, but I think it's discouraging sometimes when you look at our roads of all the stuff that's thrown out. It's a little scary too. When I look at my road, Pumpkin Hill Road, and I see all the bottles, it scares me a little bit because I walk on the road a lot and I'm like, ooh, how many bottles have people consumed while they're driving? But anyway, so that's why I invited you here, Tom, and thought we could talk a little bit and think about what you think might be possible with your group or who might be interested in helping us out or in some way, supporting this endeavor as a way of really showing pride in Ashford and say, hey, it's a beautiful town. And when you drive around and see all this trash on the highways, it's discouraging, to say the least.
How about a full page in Neighbors?
Oh, yeah. Well, that might be a bit much, but for sure a quarter page anyways.
There you go.
And I think we have over 67, between 60 and 70 members in our group. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't been meeting as often as we like. But there's definitely, like you mentioned, sponsorship. Loretta, we do have some funds that we could use to help support the effort, be it buying bags or gloves or whatever. So you could just, what kind of, or we just, write you a check and go from there and let you figure out what you want to use with it. And then I can present it to our members. We can, on that day, that, maybe we could get some of the members and their families out on their roads to do it and get the word out. And maybe we have one of our members, anything printed, they do signs. So we might be able to pick up print up some signs and we could put our logo on it or something like that. So it wouldn't cost any,
Yeah.
we would pay for those to
Right.
announce the event. And so I just thought when I reached out to you last year that it would be great for all the organizations to talk to each other, once in a
Right.
while. And especially if you have some kind of event coming up, so that everybody's on the same page and knows what's going on, and hopefully we can all help each other to make that
Right.
event a success.
Yeah. And I think the signs could be helpful because if a business wants to advertise, what Ian did when he sponsored us, he put several signs all over the town and they stayed there for a while. So it was good advertising for him because you could clearly see, the business. And so it could be just Ashford Business Association, or it could be particular members who wanted to print up a few signs and put it out in a couple of key places in the town. I mean, I don't think we'd have much problem with the town in terms of putting up temporary signs like that.
No, I think it's a good idea. And I'll talk, hopefully we're going to have a meeting the first couple weeks of February and can go over the event and come up with some ideas about sponsorship. And if signage is a good way to go, then we'll see if we can sell some signs for either the ABA or some individual businesses who would want to be able, and I can contact the folks at Anything Printed and see what numbers we're talking as far as cost per sign and that kind of stuff. And we can come up with some kind of ideas.
Oh, great. Yeah. Christine.
I think the real need is bodies. How about getting donations from your members to have something like a prize for most bags or something at the end of the day as an incentive. And everybody meets at the gazebo at the end. What?
Like maybe biggest team.
Biggest team, or
if people
most
would form teams and it would be the biggest team with the most bags or whatever.
Biggest team for one, most bags for another, something else for a third. So have three prizes. Everybody at the end of it meets at the gazebo, and there's a prize giving out event.
I was also going to suggest if certain businesses wanted to get involved. Maybe they could adopt a road and have, you know, get a bunch of people to do that road. And then when we write it up, they would be acknowledged as, you know, so-and-so adopted this road and cleaned it up.
Mm.
Oh, that's a
That's
good
right.
thought.
I've seen that before. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's like on highways, they do that. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I wonder-
and I agree with Christine that we do need bodies, and that was, I mean, if would you say you had 67 businesses belong?
Yeah. About
Yeah.
between 60 and 70, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if each of those people just told someone about it, and encouraged a neighbor to come join them or something, I think that would be another way. Word of mouth seems to be a good way to publicize an event like this. I'm going, let's go down for an hour or something like that,
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
the Ashford community page is also another good outlet for that. Pam knows that well, and I think she
Yeah.
advertises there.
Yeah, Pam usually puts out a lot of publicity on the connections page. And I don't know, does anyone know a teacher at the Ashford School? Because I was thinking like an 8th, 7th grader, they would be okay about being on. I wouldn't want to go younger, but I think, an 8th grader could walk on the road and watch out for things with the vest on and all that. So I don't know if there's a science teacher or anything in the school that might want to also encourage some of their students to take part in this, or their students and family and their parents, a parent.
I can check with, I can check on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, me too. Know this, Janet, that Dory Moore, who was the 8th grade science teacher, is leaving, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
She's gone, actually, and she's a big loss for Ashford School, but kind of
Yeah.
But
sad.
someone's taking over her position, right?
Yeah, but there are other teachers that could do the same thing.
I think if it were someone who had shown an interest in some sorts of sustainability and, cleanup and stuff like that, they're more motivated to do it because it's a little bit extra work or something like that to organize. Yeah, but yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. I'm glad that you're willing to help out, Tom, and see what we can do about, number one, publicizing, and two, if we can get a couple of businesses to stand behind and make a sign or promote or take a road or whatever. All those are, I think, really good ideas. Or the prizes, whatever.
Or make a prize, yeah.
Yeah.
A prize
Well-
from such and such tree company for most bags.
We've done that before. Our big event every year was the car cruises that we have in the summer, and we haven't done it in a couple of years. Hopefully, coming summer, we'll be able to do some more. But we would have prizes at every car cruise, so things donated from local businesses or gift certificates. So that prize equation, we could do something with that.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Plus, that would sort of make it fun,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think people are going to clean the roads for the prize, but it would be fun.
It would be fun, yeah. If there
So-
was an event at the end of the 3 hours or whatever, and people kind of could meet together and then celebrate their prize.
Yeah, no, it'd be a good thing.
Right.
And it's
People like
March, so we could
know.
have, we could still have hot coffee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tom. I really appreciate you're willing to cooperate and help with us and whatever. I mean, we can't predict what's going to happen, but I think just the reaching out and the wanting to establish a connection and working together is a good thing. And it has to help Ashford in the long run. That's the way I look at it. And that's what we all want. I think that's why we're here, why we live here. We love our town. Yeah.
And a quarter page in Neighbors.
Yeah. Sure. We can do that. We can do
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. The next agenda item is the budget letter, which I sent out, and a couple people commented on it. And if everyone has looked at it, and if no one has any objections, I think we can get ready to send it, or if you have some questions about all that.
Well, my question was, where has this money come from in the past?
I think it comes from if there's a development kind of thing, they have an option to create open space land or give a fee in lieu of that. And I believe that's where it has come from. And most of it was used. There's what is there? 2,041.67 left in the fund right now. And
2000?
2,041.67 cents.
That was not going to buy much.
No, but like the 2 times we did use that, and that's why it really got depleted very quickly, was for the purchasing of the development rights, where we had to pay this, the town had to pay 25% and the state pays 75%. So that's where that came from. But this would generate, if the Board of Finance agreed, it would generate about 8,000 per year.
Yeah.
That, and I think that would be a healthy step. I mean, it's not really gonna be a big blow to the town in terms of their overall budget, but it would certainly help the fund, and it would give us some bargaining power. Not that I don't know that we would ever have enough to actually buy a property, but there's a couple of properties in town that could come up for development rights that I would hate to see go past the boards because we didn't have the money for it.
I just had a couple of editorial comments, not content comments.
Yeah, I sent her some edits too.
One was actually on the first sentence, after you say from Yale Forest, approximately $8,000 be designed. I
know. Yeah,
It's
Christine caught
designated.
that one also. Yes, very good.
So,
Thank you.
Designated was obviously what you had in mind. And I was wondering also in the second paragraph, when you're talking about the summer session, do you mean summer season? I don't know that people relate to.
The summer session is the sessions that they have at the school for the interns.
Oh, I see.
So
Oh, it
it's
really is like a semester or a session.
like a semester. I think it might go from May through August.
August, yeah.
And they have a lot of summer things going on, mostly because you can be outside. So they have a lot of outside talks, and they do have a place where they can show movies too. And they have a place they can do that outside and everything. So yeah, that was session.
Okay. And one other thing was actually the second to last sentence. I guess I would write it, this relatively small amount of money will not impact the budget overall, but will increase our open space fund on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Small things, but
no, that's helpful. That's why I sent the letter. I wanted people to put their little divots in so it can sound a little better.
Loretta, we could vote on this and have it come from the whole commission, if you'd like.
We
Right,
certainly
make a
can vote
motion.
on it, but I thought that was implied since I'm sending it from the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Do we need to do that as a commission, you know?
Well, I think the Board of Finance might ask. you know,
Well,
so
why
I,
don't we vote on it?
Okay, well,
I,
let's vote on
I
it.
move
I
that we,
move
I move that we
accept
support.
the letter as part of our commission.
Okay,
Second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, we got it. So I'll have that in the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And thanks for your input. That's helpful. Yeah, it's really funny how it's so hard to edit your own writing because you know what you're saying, but sometimes the words don't match what you're
Right.
saying. Okay, now we get to probably the thing that will take the most time in our meeting is the farming business that potentially may come up. And I think we have a couple of people here who are going to be talking about that, as is Steve. So maybe Steve, you can start it all off and inform us and let us know what your thinking is or what's going on and what the issues are.
Is this the ag biotic businesses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the agenda item. Thanks. Hold on a second. Let me switch gears here for a second. I want to get to my notes. Okay, so hold the thought of using money for an open space fund, because that's going to come up in a different way. So recently, my neighbor approached me and said he was looking to do a project, some greenhouses on his land, and that's adjacent to us. And he showed me a picture of a drawing that on his phone. It was, when you look at scale drawings on a phone, it's pretty hard to tell much of anything. So he went on to describe it as a bunch of greenhouses. They'd be raising greens in the greenhouses. I sort of quizzed him a little bit about it. Where's the water coming from? Oh, we're drilling wells. How are you replenishing the soil? Well, we're looking to get chicken manure from another town. He mentioned a lot that's behind my house and off to the east, adjacent to my other neighbor, Claudia Urson, who's also on this call. And as I talk about this, I want you to understand that, I have an interest in what we're talking about, because it could affect the value of my property. But I think the most alarming thing about this project, as described, we've since checked this project out more thoroughly, done some research, found out that it's agbotic, which, if you're familiar with the agbotic project on Browns Road in Mansfield, there have been quite a few headlines in the Chronicle about that. This is sort of industrial farming, if you will. Agriculture that's using land that's tax, that has tax benefits, or has been donated. I shouldn't say donated. The development rights have been given to the state. Now that should give us all some pause because we worked pretty hard to get the Knowlton property, um, uh, the development rights. I think the state holds those development rights. Am I correct in that,
Yeah.
Loretta?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the land in Mansfield is land that was is protected. The development rights are owned by the state. What they're proposing to put there is pretty large scale industrial agriculture in greenhouses that are 350 feet long and 50 feet wide, 24/7. Attendants, employees, people are employed. They work there 24/7. There's lighting. These are big buildings.
How
Kind of,
many?
pardon me?
How many?
6 greenhouses, but to give you
6,
some
okay.
idea of the scale,
Yeah,
just the basic footprint is about the size of a Walmart. And we're a little concerned about the fact that it's doesn't seem that because it's agriculture, much of the oversight by various town entities, PZC, etc., it may not be available. So not that they can just do whatever they want. You know, if they're close to wetlands and other areas, you know, there's they have to get approval, but again, it doesn't necessarily follow the same process that any other commercial development might follow. But I'm sort of summarizing. Also know that the Heffleys own this property. Their land is quote unquote protected by the Farmland Trust. Farmland Trust is aware of this project, and in at least an initial conversation with them, they have no concerns because it comes under the guise of agriculture. So be aware that just because development rights have been sold to the state or given to another agency that, and by the way, Farmland Trust is a 401c. It's a charitable organization. It's not a state agency per se. Just be aware that things are not necessarily protected in the way that we thought they were, and people are leveraging that inability to review for their own gain, let's say. But I want to introduce Claudia Urson because she has something to say about this too. We've worked together on some things, gathering information, and I'll just hand it over to Claudia if that's okay. Thank you for listening.
Hi
Claudia.
there.
Hi.
So in early January, I learned of this project and I was pretty surprised about the magnitude of it and how far along it had come when I was told. So just to give you a review of a little bit about myself, I've lived in town for 46 years. I built a hand-hewn log house on our property. We have done endless hard work to make it the beautiful place that it is today. And my reason for being here today is just to have the townspeople be aware of what's happening in our town. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my daughter, Melissa Coyle, and eventually my son-in-law, Chris Coyle. Thank you for your time.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Melissa Coyle. Claudia is my mother. I grew up on the property that abuts this proposed building site. We've owned that property since I was 6 years old. I am now in my 50s. I have a very emotional interest and attachment to what's going on there. It's something that is a homestead and a legacy for my family. It's an area that we love, as I'm sure you all appreciate the nature of it being protected. It's something that I'm just going to say I hope to inherit one day and be able to pass on to my daughters. My mother came to me concerned about the news that she had heard, and she shared the sketch with me. Again, the sketch didn't look alarming, didn't look like much, but as soon as we saw the label that was on the document, we were able to do some research that immediately correlated this project to the Agbotic project in Mansfield. We then were able to research other projects that were proposed in the town of Granby, as well as a project that was done in New York State. My husband who is Chris Coyle, has been helping me along with Steve and Claudia to gather information to try to get as many facts as we can to understand what this indoor farming industry is and how it will affect the landscape where we are and the property values immediately for Steve, Mary, and Claudia. So I'm going to turn this over to my husband, Chris. We have worked together in tandem, all of us, to put together a PowerPoint presentation just with some facts so that you all can be caught up to where we are. So here's Chris.
Hi, everyone, and sorry for all the talking heads.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to see you tonight. Thank you, Steve, for the introduction, Claudia and Melissa. And as Steve said, certainly in the sake of full disclosure, we think that's really important in town proceedings. We do have an interest in this matter, and that is, as globally speaking, property abutters and interested in citizens of Ashford. So I am going to turn off my camera because I'm certain you didn't come here tonight to look at me. And what will be much better is to look at this presentation that I am going to confirm you can see my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Super. Let me figure out how to move these windows around so I can make this bigger.
No, I think you just have to start a slideshow, right?
Yes. Boy, that's good. You're better than I am at this.
I do this.
All right. Can
There you
everyone
go.
see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So in reviewing these facts over the last couple of weeks, just I think a couple of preliminary matters are important to just mention. The first is that in any situation like this, we recognize openly that industry, creativity, innovation is a way of life. It's certainly what makes our country unique. And certainly no one is against innovation, creativity, and the march of technology in every facet, including agriculture. I think at the same time, and I remember learning this when I was teaching, one has to be soft on the people, but hard on the issues. And there's nothing in what we're going to say that is intended to disparage any particular individual, group, or company. They have every right to assert their proposals. But as Claudia mentioned and Melissa, facts have been uncovered, continue to be uncovered, that suggest Ashford in particular, specifically, but rural towns in Connecticut have to be really aware of what is happening. Because as you're going to hear in a minute, contrary to really the national trend of the way this industry known as indoor farming or vertical farming is going, we've got a company that appears to be targeting small rural towns in Connecticut, including Ashford. So first of all, by way of background, the area we're talking about, as I said, is known as indoor farming, vertical farming, food manufacturing. And we're going to get into that definition because, as Steve said, it really is fundamental to the thought process here. And one can read about this from groups like Gotham Greens that just announced a big 100,000 square foot facility in Providence on an old GE site, to a site in Colorado Industrial Park. As you can see here, on rooftops, parking lots, brownfield sites, really nearby their urban market, close to infrastructure that's already there. You notice trains, roads, electric, and so forth. So the real question that this matter presents is, are rural towns like Ashford, specifically fertile agricultural fields, an appropriate place to dig up dirt, put cement foundations, and build buildings the size of Walmarts under the guise or the term agricultural, alternative agriculture? I won't go through these in detail, but it struck me that a little bit of research would help us all get our heads around this. So on the left, you see those activities and those characteristics and attributes that are typically associated with agriculture. And as we know, in sort of common sense and in law, the concept of the reasonable person, kind of the concept, what's the common understanding here? All of you in good faith are serving on this commission, and you've had this sense that, look, agriculture it fits with rural. It's certainly compatible with conservation goals. It's got a slow, steady economic foundation that happens to be really getting better with more national, international markets. It's in open fields that use them, and where they build buildings and use IT, it really is in support of the primarily agricultural activity with normal seasonal growth cycles and so forth. So you might think a shed for cows, a shed for storing hay, those kinds of things, barns, and so forth. It is interesting to note both the United States, primarily Australia and the UK, horses have been grandfathered into the definition agriculture. It's interesting to read that none of them really are considered agriculture. It's really recreation. But because it has many of the attributes of agriculture, that is hay and grazing, but some jurisdictions actually say if you're feeding them out of a bucket and they're not grazing in fields, it really moves over to recreation. So it's just interesting to note, in Ashford and around Connecticut, around the country, we have sort of grandfathered horses and riding and the sports around horses. That said, as you know, it'd be common sense, you wouldn't approve a racetrack with lighting at night and betting. That would be a commercial operation. If someone said, well, it's horses and horses are agriculture, ergo my big stadium for horse racing is okay. Or someone said, I'm raising cows, but now I want to do a meat packaging plant and have organic beef delivered directly to Whole Foods. You and others might say, well, wait a sec, that sounds a lot like manufacturing. On the right, you see that manufacturing is pretty self-evident. In the case of agbotics and those in this industry, and there are many, the whole idea is to, like all manufacturing, and the word production, is to gain levels of efficiency, lower costs by fast cycles of production. We're talking almost 2 crops a month, package delivered to stores, so constant traffic, and a high use of electric and water. By the way, we put in references to these statements from agbotics and other statements in Mansfield and other publications. So we'll give you all these. We didn't make up anything. If we didn't find it, know it, we didn't include it here. What's really notable for this group and your service to the town of Ashford and the community is that most everything we could find is primarily in urban areas because it's obvious. They've got infrastructure. They are getting support because an old General Electric factory site in Providence looks a lot better with industrial greenhouses serving the local restaurants and community. It also is interesting to note, and you can see this on the internet, that already prices for industrial hemp, which is one of the things they make, has really started to drop because of oversupply. And the same thing appears to be in its early stages in some of the vegetables as these guys, as unfortunately as the American way, is sort of flooding into this new exciting thing. And according to the CEO of Gotham Greens, one of the first companies in that targets urban areas specifically, claims that most of them, except his company, are unprofitable. So I think this definition is fundamental to the discussions going forward with planning and zoning in the town, in your group, because it's our belief that common sense would say, look, while the product is green coming out the door in a plastic bag for some restaurant in Boston, it's food manufacturing, it's not agriculture. Now let's get to where and try and figure out whether that makes sense. First of all, you're all familiar with this map. This is open space plan, part of your open space plan. And zooming in on the specific area, you'll see the location of the property there, right next to the Knowlton Preserve, the waterways, and you notice it's part of the open space corridor. And as Steve mentioned, we do find it notable, and I would think somewhat incredulous. And I must say, we're sort of trying to understand how it would be that someone would, quote, sell their development rights, get money, and turn around and be able to develop essentially a commercial operation, or supposedly preserve farmland and then be incentivized to destroy the very farmland that they led everyone to believe they were preserving. Why have a name, Farmland Preservation Trust, when you're supporting the decimation of agricultural fields? But that's for another discussion. This is an aerial map, and thanking Melissa and Steve, the research we did, you'll notice that the very significant wetland area, which is in the property and is not only nearby, it abuts it. And you'll see in a second a topographical map with a steep drop off directly into the wetlands. This is the map I was referring to. You'll notice, you can see my cursor, the steep topographical striations here indicating that there is a significant slope there. Also, according to your plans, it's got prime soils in this area. And so again, just by way of background location. Again, another view of the wetlands. And if anyone has walked there, you know that coming along the long of the field, the wetlands really during normal seasonal rains and snow melt comes literally to the right of the edge of the road. So it's not something that's in the distance, it's right there next door. And that will become relevant in a minute. So I think by now you all know where this is. We thought it was helpful just to give you a couple of aerial views of it. And really, by way of thanks to you and others that came before you and others that will follow, with a vision of saying, look, development is good in Ashford, it's natural, but so is conservation. Conservation has a vote right alongside development, and we have something we can never get back if it's ruined, and that is open space, freshwater, agriculture. And these are from a drone that just gives a sense of the contiguous land and how this open space fits in with this. Again, pointing out that the landowners have had the benefit of development rights and all sorts of things to turn around and suggest they're going to develop on that land. Okay, let's get down to the details of what we've learned. This greenhouse factory is known, their name, Agbotic Paradise. I do think it's a little humorous, the name Paradise. I'm not sure who they might refer to that would consider this factory they're going to build Paradise, perhaps it's them and no one else. It is on land owned by the Heffleys. We are not certain what role the Heffleys play, what they know, if anything. We're really in the dark on any of that, so we're mindful and respectful of their privacy, but they happen to own the land upon which this is being proposed. Hayfields, woodland, and wetlands, and 4 property boundaries in total, 2 homes abutting, and several other properties. What's really notable here is what was portrayed as a few greenhouses is actually, in fact, a building footprint that is significantly larger than an average Walmart store. And you can see the Google search there. 3 football fields long, to give you just a sense of how big this is. Another way, and Melissa, thank you for your math, much better than I at that, but taking the square footage of Steve and Mary's house, this would be 96 Steve and Mary houses developed on this parcel. That's how big it is in total square foot. So from a water usage standpoint, to give you an idea, we'll get to that in a minute, but 1,000 gallons you see down below, or 6,000 a day. According to searches, so the average home uses about 300 gallons a day. So that's like 20 homes developed on the site, just different ways of looking at this project. And by the way, I should have said, please feel free to interrupt me, ask any questions. We'll stop and have a chat at the end, but if there are any specific questions on anything I'm saying here, I really should have been open. Steve, I invite you, Mary, Claudia, Melissa. So please, any questions, just interrupt. So what you see here, thanks to Melissa's work on the computer, is she took the image that was provided to Claudia and Steve in early January and laid it onto a map from the town. Is that right, Melissa? Yeah. And what's notable about this map is it provides actual dimensions, so we can begin to figure out the scale of what's really being proposed here. I think it's fair to say it didn't strike us that what we were shown really is in scale in terms of size. And in particular, I would note for you that a road going into an industrial site like this that's turning out 2 crops a month and has 14 people or spaces for cars, people coming in and out, deliveries, has a road that's smaller than Varga Road or Wormwood. It would strike one that trucks coming in and out needs full-size 2-way road, it needs full-size shoulders, and it needs berm on either side. It certainly needs parking infrastructure around it. So we thought the building envelope, or the total project envelope, appeared very small. You notice in the map we were given over here, this says leach fields, well locations, all in the middle of these fields. So while it doesn't look like it's being used, it's all being dug up and being used. So you'll see why that's relevant in the next graphic, where we took the square footage of the Agbotics property, or project, as we call it, using the dimensions that I mentioned on the prior map. We laid out the size of the footprint of just what we were given, not the envelope around it.
Please keep in mind for reference that the black shape that you see is the equivalent of 3 football fields. All the space around it is the additional construction site, staging area, and roads and parking spaces.
So as an example, thank you, Melissa, we took the driveway and simply calculated based on, again, Googling how much room does a car or truck need. And we didn't even use big trucks. We used like Amazon delivery trucks. And the width of the driveway, you can see now, Varga and Wormwood, and we all know those don't have shoulders. They're barely 2-lane. This more depicts, and someone might argue against this, well, you've overestimated the footprint of the building. Reasonable argument. We don't think so. Just looking at other projects, and since there are trucks going in, and this is an industrial manufacturing site, and their own plan calls for wells and transformer pads, And those typically aren't sitting in a hayfield, they're sitting on cement and have infrastructure buried beneath them. So I think it's fair to say that the envelope that we show raises a number of concerns. One, it appears to the boundary that they're talking about is just a mere 25 feet to the property line of the stone wall, which is barely enough for one car to drive one way, couldn't turn around on the backside. And there are other things like French drain, discharge coming over on the private property and so forth. But more concerning for the Conservation Commission is to the west, is that the driveway and the whole project would likely need substantial infill and berms, because to dig down the amount it will take to put in the cement footings and then to level it off and build a road, that's all going to be right in the wetlands.
Also of note is that it was conveyed to Claudia and Steve that the height of these greenhouses will be 25 feet, and they can reach 25 feet only because they need to have 5 feet below ground. So they're going to be digging 5 feet down because the actual height is 30 feet. So they're going to be digging out 5 feet of soil. And we all know that to put in footings for a 5-foot foundation is actually digging up more farmland soils.
Well, Melissa, to your
Deeper
point,
than that.
one knows to put in infrastructure to get what's known as a finish grade at 5 feet down, you've got to dig down 20 feet. So you'll have fill that's compacted, you'll have rebar and forced cement, all the utilities stubbed up coming in from Varga Road. We have not addressed in this presentation all the questions that the town of Ashford would need to ask is who's going to develop Varga Road into an industrial size paved road with all the infrastructure, electric, and so forth, and whether the town's decision to deem it scenic can be overruled or disregarded out of hand. Like, oh, now that someone comes along, we're going to no longer call it scenic. It's now the Agbotics Paradise Highway, I guess would be the new term. We don't know yet. So this gives you, in our view, a more realistic view of what this would look like. Again, I'm sure the project promoters might debate this, and that's fine. We'd love to hear where all the dirt will go, where the trucks for construction, all the materials to build something the size of a Walmart that's 3 football fields long. But it gives you a decent view of what this potential project could look like in a field that is prime soils, current fertile agriculture, designated as a conservation area, development rights bought, farmland trust. It's sort of incredible that someone would sort of come and say, I want to do this in the one place in the world you think there'd be a lot of signposts going, probably not a great spot to do it. So this is what a finished product looks like, as you saw on the list earlier, something that takes it from inception to production, accelerates it's done entirely indoors. Us is indoor farming. And what's interesting is all the companies out there actually operating today make no bones about it that they're indoor farming. They make no bones about it. They need electricity infrastructure. And that's why they're all in cities. That's why they're all on brownfield, former factory sites. To give you an idea of how big this project is, we superimposed the one that's now built in Providence on the GE site, and you see its size. This is almost double the size. And it's interesting to note, Melissa, you correct me here, and Claudia, but as statements made from the promoters and other information we've gathered from, I believe it is New York, is these developers have a clear intention of trying to add more greenhouses, add a cogeneration, a power plant. We all know that the idea of solar is exciting, but when it's put in prime agricultural fields, most states have figured out that's probably not a great trade-off from carbon or anything else. And so the whole idea is to put an amount of additional equipment and so forth to support a bigger operation. The reason is obvious. Once you've stubbed up all this stuff, you've gotten the tax breaks from the town and you're operating, your best course of action is to just try and keep expanding.
Chris, if I could just add to that, in the research that we've done, we have examined minutes from Board of Selectmen meetings from various towns. They include the site in New York. They include the town of Granby, which rejected the Agbotic proposal, as well as Mansfield. And in all of those instances, one of which is very notable, I think their initial project site was New York. They put up one greenhouse, they had that up and running. Then they did the 6. The 6 seems to be their model. They thought everything was fine. Then they went to tap into the infrastructure of the grid and found that the grid could not support their expansion. And there is a statement on record that basically says, that's fine, we'll just go find somewhere else. And then chairman of the board comes along, who is the former COO of United Illuminating, and he has a lot of knowledge in how to tap into grid infrastructure. And if you look at the minutes for the proposal for the town of Granby, he seems to have answers to every single way that they can make this work, but always with a plan of expansion. So they put in 6 and then they put in 30 more. So that entire field eventually will be greenhouses. And I can tell you from what both Claudia and Steve were told verbally, they were both told that this is only the beginning. This will be phase 1 and then it will expand.
So in closing, thank you for that, Melissa. We really encourage you guys to help the town and townspeople really get a handle on this. One could ask, why would one developer, unlike anyone else in the industry, and this is a fledgling industry that's really having some fall. There's hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital. Some are public. There's a lot of speculation. The market's softening. There's overbuilding. Why would this group target small towns, in this case now Ashford? And our belief is that they can get tax benefits under the guise of agriculture. They can get inexpensive land because they say to the landowner, hey, you lease us the land and we'll cut you in on the deal and we'll all make $1 million. And so we really believe, and again, I know I'm bordering on sort of speculation that could get personal, and that's not meant. It's just that not a lot is known. And I'll give you a prime example. A former UConn professor in Mansfield wrote a number of letters, and if I'm correct, I think he was involved in agriculture marketing. And he said
agriculture and economics.
And economics, and sort of said, why is no town asked for a business plan? I mean, if these other guys are getting great economic development credits for building on a brownfield site like Providence, an old GE factory, and are closer to the market, have shorter delivery times and so forth, what are these guys, why are they building in agricultural fields? And we don't know the answer, but we guess that it's for some of the reasons I mentioned. They're hoping that the tax benefits, and why do I say that? One, Granby was told that they would have revenue. They publicly said, we're going to get this amount of tax revenue.
It was $180,000.
And at the end, they found out they were getting what, $6,000?
Agbotic claimed they were exempt for all their robots because it was all considered agricultural equipment. The tax amount they were going to be getting was $9,000.
So then switched to Mansfield. They were told we're going to get all this revenue, and then an interchange that's on the internet. Again, the CEO said no, they think they're exempt from all taxes. So it's interesting to note that there are currently recommendations within various commissions in town to recommend changes to the agricultural tax abatement that we've called the attention of the town, that they may want to really think about that and understand what's behind that a little better. So our request for you to consider is to reach a recommendation that you could provide formally that really says we need to, as a town, really slow down and look at this carefully. and that really we should not approve any changes to regulations that could affect a project like this until all the facts are disclosed, the roles, most importantly, the risks and costs of the town. And therefore, is there any benefit to the town? Is there a true cost value? And that be fully and openly considered. And here's the thing that makes it crazy, is at the same time, all this industry is headed toward brownfield sites, urban sites. The town of Ashford, as we understand, actually has bought former industrial land where such a project might really work well. And actually, instead of incentivizing the destruction of agricultural land, they're incentivizing the use of property the town of Ashford has already bought that's much more appropriate for this sort of factory location.
Trash.
So, Melissa, any closing comments before we just open a discussion? Claudia? Steve?
I'm
Yeah, I
good.
was going to say, oh, go ahead, Melissa.
That was Claudia.
We're good. Thank you so much for the chance to go through this.
Thank you.
So I was going to say that, Chris, the commission may not be aware that Ashford recently acquired the what's commonly known as the wagon shed property. Ashford, all the land that's in Ashford, Ashford now owns.
Okay.
There's been talk for years about, what to do, whether to buy it. And apparently they worked out some deal where that site is now owned as a result of back taxes. So, so we spent a lot of time sort of on details, the size and scale. But what I think our major concern is, like, as Chris pointed out, we thought that a lot of land in Ashford was protected, and it appears that in fact it is not. And I think as a commission, we should be worried about that and should convey some of our thoughts to other commissions in terms of, recall that with the Knowlton property, I think Loretta said 25% was paid by Ashford taxpayers for development rights. The state owns those development rights now, and the state owned the development rights for the project in Mansfield and was all for this project that Agbotics has proposed there. Why wouldn't that be done again? Perhaps in many other sites around town. But Knowlton property is pretty big. The carrying capacity for projects like this would be pretty high there. But thank you again for listening, and I'm hoping that we'll have a good takeaway on what actually can happen under the guise of agriculture, and we should be worried about that.
Christine, you have a question?
I have several questions. So one is, so does this not have to go to planning and zoning? Two, have you talked to the agricultural commission? Have you shown them your slides? Who else have you been going around to the other commissions in town to show them this stuff?
I'd be glad to take the lead on that and then welcome other people. First of all, again, we just learned of this sort of casually by the promoter with a statement, the inference of this is happening. And so we don't know exactly what is happening. We don't know, even in minutes that we've read where there are discussion of changing, for example, nuisance regulations and zoning, what the background is, what it's for, why would you want to change setbacks, all under the guise of agriculture. We have obvious suspicions of why that's asked, but we don't know. So we, just for the record, we have, Claudia has asked the Board of Selectmen to look into these matters and find out where this project is. As to whether or not planning and zoning has a jurisdictional role. We don't know. It appears other towns, they certainly do. It appears in this town, they certainly could. So the answer is really procedurally, we just don't know. We haven't been told anything. What we've been told is the one image that you saw on one of those slides. I think it's fair to say that's really all we've been given.
Right.
And a couple of verbal this and that, but the investigation where we've asked people questions, researched Granby, we've researched internationally all the companies, Mansfield, we've read the professor from Mansfield's letters. And so this is what you're seeing today. So your question was what's going in Ashford? We really don't know. And that's part of our Claudia's real concern that this
Right.
seems a little bit murky and subterranean or for whatever reason. So we
Right.
just don't know what's going on.
So
You
my
should know-
question is, are you going to try to get on the agenda for the Agriculture Commission, for Planning and Zoning, for wetlands, for other interested parties? I think this calls for full-scale alarm personally, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, so on
thanks.
that matter, we attended the Board of Selectmen Zoom call last Tuesday. And in that call, we did not say anything, but Claudia had submitted a letter earlier in the day that objected to a proposal from the Agricultural Commission for a change to the ordinance on tax abatement that would provide another $100,000 and change the definition of what could be included under it. And we asked some questions about how that proposal came to be, who wrote it, and whether anyone had done any research on exactly what properties in Ashford would benefit from such a tax abatement. Steve pointed out that a future project, which was alluded to, that spent millions of dollars and could have things like robots and trucks and a farm factory included, would stand to make hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax abatement. So we raised these issues to the Board of Selectmen via letter and really asked for them to, again, slow things down, look into this, research who's doing what, who's disclosing what, and where do they stand and why are they promoting things. And then we'll figure out, I think, what to do. At the same time, you know, Claudia is obviously, as Steve probably is, looking at their rights as adjoining property owners on what's their right to quiet enjoyment of their properties in an agricultural, by the way, residential agriculturally zoned area. So that's what we're doing. I'm sorry to frustrate you, but we don't know what's going on, and we certainly are ready, as you can see, to take significant action and are, but we really need to find out where Ashford stands at this point, what the town itself really knows. So that was the reason we recommended a motion and a communication from this commission to Planning and Zone, to the Board of Selectmen, that really raises the red flag and says, whoa, we've got to really find out what's going on here.
Really like a call to action.
But you know, what I'm hearing from you is that you're the ones who know the most. So that these other
Lisa-
commissions,
So,
so these other commissions may be hearing only from that corporate entity and
You're right.
not
And-
hearing
and-
all this other stuff. So that's why I'm saying, you know, like, if you have this other information that you've dug up, it needs to go places.
Christine, you're absolutely right. And we are ready, willing, and able. And let me express it differently. The thing we would like to establish before we do that is to really have full disclosure of who's promoting this project, what committees are they on, what's going on in the town. So we're not going to launch into some commission not knowing what they've been talking about, because the minutes and the Zoom meetings don't provide a lot of information. What we do know is there's been active discussion about tax abatements that look like they could support a project like this. There are discussions of zoning ordinance changes that all appear interestingly sort of relevant to a industrial size factory. Things like relaxing the nuisance ordinance. So, quote, a single landowner, and this is a quote, right, Melissa? You know, a single landowner couldn't complain about smell or noise. Gosh, has that ever been a problem in Ashford? Interesting to ask. Zoning setback, driveway, allowing agriculture to have relaxed driveway requirements, road signage, because they know they will need a lot more road signage, family dwelling. Those are 5 things that have been discussed in planning and zoning over the last year without any disclosure of the people talking about
Excuse
them.
me, they're all being discussed and proposed by the Agricultural Commission. Not sure who they're being advocated by or what current
In
person.
planning and zoning.
Right, but all the proposals are being presented by the Agricultural Commission. So I want to know what farmers in Ashford currently have problems with their
Nuisance,
neighbors saying
right.
they're a nuisance.
So
And
you
what-
see, Christine, the issue we've asked the Board of Selectmen already to dig into this so that there is, like any town government that's supposed to be representative, transparent, without conflict of interest, what's going on? Who's asking for what, why, and what's the analysis back to them of these proposals? And so that it's really first stage, we think, is a fact gathering. And that's what we shared tonight. What you just saw was the result of our work over the last week and a half of just gathering facts.
Right.
So here's another thing to be concerned about. Know that the Mansfield project on Browns Road, the project was, I believe, filed in April, and by July 6th, I think, the project was approved by the special permit from the PZC. So that should give you some sense of how fast these sorts of things can move. And that's why we're very concerned too. We know that some initial conversations have been had with, key people, and we're a little worried about where Ashford might be in that process too. It's not clear that the normal path would be followed for development in a project like this.
Well, and please keep in mind that for this Ashford Paradise, okay, Agbotic Ashford Paradise, sorry. Anyway, for this project, that this has been going on, as Steve said, since April of 2021. And he and I, as abutters, just learned about this on January 4th.
So,
Chris, could I ask, when you went before the Board of Selectmen, did you get a sense that they were aware of the project?
we
So-
wrote letters.
Because it sounds like what your wife said was that it was coming, the reg things, re-examining the reg things were coming from the Ag Commission. And I'm just
Yes, so-
wondering if this a piece by piece kind of thing, and you seem to be presenting the whole picture to us. And I just wonder how many of, like the Board of Selectmen know of the whole project as they're being, asked about certain things. That's all. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a good concern, and we share your concern. What I can tell you is, as of last Tuesday, when Claudia submitted a letter that uncovered what we knew at the time, we know a lot more now. It was clear, I think, all of us watching the call and seeing the nature of the questions to the people representing the Agricultural Commission who were there as new business in that evening on this proposed additional tax abatement. I think it's fair to say, and you can watch the Zoom, it appeared to us that the selectmen had a lot of questions, were absolutely concerned about looking into this. made it very clear they were not going to make any motion to vote on the proposed addition to the abatement ordinance, and wanted to gather much more information. One of the selectmen referred directly to Gotham Greens, called it a warehouse, and a discussion ensued that the promoters or the people from the Agriculture Commission with the proposal endorsing it had not seen Claudia's letter, did not know what they say, but the particular selectman here said, look, we understand there's some project that's big. We really wonder if that fits in Ashford, and we've got to look into this. So there was some indication that the selectmen were starting to look into it and understand. But
I'm sorry, and
Yeah.
I just want to interject. To add to that, please understand that the initial letter from Claudia was really a response in, sort of a hurry and a panicked way to respond to the fact that the Agricultural Commission was proposing a tax abatement that very clearly would specifically benefit this project. And I'm not going to start pointing fingers about who was proposing it, who requested the changes, who requested the language of the changes, what it was very clearly targeting. But that was the mission of that letter, was specific to an agenda item on the Board of Selectmen's meeting. So no, the information that was just shared with you
tonight,
in the scope of everything that we have learned and had the opportunity to share with you, which we really appreciate, you are the first that we have been able to share the full scope of what this is. I think that the Board of Selectmen have an idea. We've provided a lot of links to a lot of factual information to them. I'm sure they've done some of their own research, but we have had a team of people on this who are probably, as you said, right, full-time, a lot further ahead on this. So thank you for the opportunity to share it with you tonight.
And I would say one thing, and just by way of Claudia, if I can, and Melissa,
Sure.
we're clearly passionate about this from a personal standpoint, from a town standpoint, and honestly, from a process fairness standpoint. I think all of us are getting tired of being told by experts to do something or stand back and not have a say in what's happening, particularly in a wonderful town like Ashford. But we're also respectful to particular people involved. We have no clue what the actual landowners, the Heffleys, know or don't know. We just don't know. Certainly, we didn't come to them the day after New Year's and say, guess what? We're building a factory in front of your house. But they're the landowners. We don't know what their position is. We really don't know the business plan. We don't know Agbotic Paradise, who's actually involved. So there's so much we don't know. We're just sort of taking the first crack at asking the town to dig into this, see how the town reacts. And I think I'm safe to say we are planning a lot of other activities. We are digging into a lot. Every potential remedy is available to us, and we will be very active in seeing this thing through. So we're ready. We're just waiting for sort of the next opening where we have a little better sense of where the town sits.
And I think it's giving the town some notice to say, technology is at this pace, and what we have in place for what we consider agriculture and allowing for exemptions for particular projects don't necessarily fit the model of what we've all thought they were in the past. So these are things that need to be examined.
Well, I think there's a lot of questions here that in terms of how we define agriculture and what is agriculture and what is not. And, the fact that it is looking like the Department of Agriculture is very much in favor of this new technology. And that it seems obvious too by what you're saying that the Ag Commission is also, and so people can, get disarmed by that. And maybe the important thing is to really push, and this is something I think as a commission we certainly can do, to examine, as I think you've said, Chris, but to examine all the facts here and to look at the larger impact on everything. And immediately what I think about is how much water this is going to
That's
use.
right.
And what is that going to do to the
Yeah,
marsh?
we just suffered through a number of drought years. Loretta, I think that was you talking, right?
Yes.
So I want to just give you one example of our concern and frustration and why we're being careful to ask Ashford to look into things. We attended a meeting, and like you, on this is GoToMeeting, I think that was Zoom. We're watching. Excuse me, people promoting hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax abatement use phrases like "in future alternative agriculture" without ever once disclosing that they happen to be involved in a project of such future agriculture, which is major greenhouses, without ever stating that to the record of why they were there and what they're doing. And thus, just as many trials are thrown out on procedural irregularities, cases are overturned where evidence was hidden. To us, that's not acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable to you or the town of Ashford. So what I'm trying to point out is we don't know, because the town has ethics ordinances, they may be quietly looking into this. We don't know, but I think you're catching the drift that the town has some due diligence to do itself and find out how far this has gone. We've heard names of consultants being hired by this promoter that are actually serving as town and state advisors. So we don't know if they're paid, they've been promised jobs, but we're trying to get to the bottom of
Transparency.
so who's the lobby here that's quietly at these meetings and not open.
I think something that's also important to keep in mind here is that I'm hearing the recognition that the Department of Agriculture was all in favor of this type of project, but I want you to understand that when a project is presented to, let's say it's Farmland Trust, and it's a sketch on a piece of paper, and they're told that it's not going to interfere with any primeland soils, and it's back in a woodland, and it's greenhouses, and it sounds fairly benign in the way it's conveyed. The letter that was issued, and let's say that same conversation happened with the commissioner of the Department of Agriculture in their application, because I found the application approval that was the letter that was granted from the commissioner. And it very clearly says, we approve your project, but please understand that it is subject to the rules and regulations of your municipality, which means that the town zoning and what they allow on an industrial scale on those farmlands applies. So it says it right in that letter. If you would like to see that letter, I can provide it to you. It is in the records on the town of Mansfield's project.
Right. Most of the information that, I mean, a great source of information are the proceedings of the PCC in Mansfield. They approved the project. The PCC there is currently being sued for not reviewing the project properly. The other thing I would say is, we learned about this project through word of mouth. That got us to, we began to realize just how big it was. And so we started digging. And, we started looking at proposals before the town. It was interesting to find the tax abatement proposal before the town. We started looking at minutes. And we've looked at, past meeting notes and minutes, and found some things that we think are interesting, to say the least. So that's why we wrote letters to the Board of Selectmen, who had on their agenda the tax abatement proposal as promoted by the Ag Commission. And I wrote a letter Claudia wrote a letter, and we've yet to hear anything about the disposition. And I don't think the Board of Selectmen, certainly not publicly, is ruled on anything with regard to those tax abatements.
And
So-
they did seem surprised, Steve. Do you think that's a fair characterization of last week?
Oh, yes, very much so. I'd encourage you to watch that Board of
Yes.
Selectmen meeting. It's very interesting. I'd also encourage you to watch the last and only Agricultural Commission meeting that is recorded. They're all available on the town website.
Chris, you had something? Christine?
Yeah, so you said the planning and zoning in Mansfield is being sued about this?
Yes.
They are.
So do you have that, the notice of that or letter or whatever? Can you
Yes,
send
we-
that to our
You bet.
planning
We
and
can get you
zoning
links
and
to
to
that.
our Board of Selectmen?
We can.
Just send that letter. You know,
Yep.
if you send that letter or that notice or that information, that should be enough to start the ball rolling. You know, if we're going to
Yes, I
get
think
sued about this,
Yes, I think we have. And in the last week, remember, it was just not even a week ago. It was a week tomorrow that we were on that selectmen meeting. So a week hence now, we've uncovered more information, more links, more details, and we're certainly going to provide that. But from a procedural standpoint, for you all being empowered with trying to provide planning and zoning the town with a vision for conservation, we were hoping that if appropriate in the strongest terms possible, you could request absolute transparency, request slow this down and really understand what's going on in the town, who's promoting what is this, and whether starting right from the beginning, this kind of activity is appropriate on land that's been preserved, its development rights sold, and is current agriculture. To destroy a field and then even provide tax incentives to incentivize destroying agricultural fields instead of using brownfield sites like the rest of the United States and all the other companies it does, is almost nonsensical. It hurts your brain. You mean Ashford's going to put it in a preserved farm field where the rest of the country is putting it on GE sites?
Right.
Tom
So
had his,
I'm sorry, if I could just for a second, Chrissy. You know, it puts in jeopardy a lot of things that the town has worked really hard to do, like our open space plan, our plan of conservation and development. And it seems that some of these things are being skirted because they come under the name of agriculture. That's almost like a free pass to do anything you want because it's agriculture. And that doesn't sit right with me. I've worked a lot of, ask Loretta how long we worked on the open space plan and the plan of conservation. You know, that was a long drawn out process and a lot of sweat went into that. And, you know, yes, I may have a personal interest in seeing that something like this doesn't happen near me, but my real concern is for conservation in general, and not just in Ashford. You know, this could be repeated throughout the state. The state is a party in all this too. They make it easy for these things to happen. You know,
Well,
first,
but
hey,
Steve, wait a minute. I'm not hearing that it's so easy. I'm hearing that Mansfield said yes, and now it's in court. I'm hearing that Granby said no. So it seems like it's not just a done deal. And it seems like, yeah, maybe groundwork is being laid by some people who have something invested in it, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, I'm not hearing that at all, that it's going to happen. I understand your concerns. And incidentally, the reason why the name Paradise, it used to be Paradise Farm.
I thought so.
That's why.
Well, and just
I'm
for a
not
little
disagreeing with
history-
what you're
just
saying.
for a
I'm
little
just saying that
history
that's the history.
on
ahead.
that. If
It was
anyone,
Random Farm.
if anyone remembers, initially it was called Random Farm. It was the Powell property,
All right. Uh-huh.
Ross and Elizabeth Powell. So Dorothy Powell married Bill Parody, thus it becoming Bill Parody's farm. Then Bill put it in the Farmland Trust. I am sure Bill's vision was not this.
I think you're absolutely right. I would totally agree with you on that.
And I knew Bill. He was an educator, and I do not think that Bill Parody ever thought that this was his vision.
And the other thing to note is, as far as we know, no plans have been filed with the town. So this is speculation. Some of this is speculation, but there are very strong indications that this is probably going to move forward. And the scary part is it could happen very quickly.
And Steve, just to reinforce that, the message to Claudia was not, this is, we're thinking of it. It's not, this is a concept. It's not, gosh, this would be neat. Right, Claudia? It was,
Right.
this is happening.
Yeah, this is
And I
happening.
want to keep you, quote, in the loop.
Right.
In the loop.
I think you can take that one better. Steve, if you can volunteer, I think you were told that trees were going to be cut soon.
What? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the way I was informed, I was walking my dog, and the conversation came. Oh, by the way, I want to show you this. It was said that and I bumped into the promoter. It was said that we want to start this pretty quick. We might start cutting trees soon, and we want to have this project underway by May. So that's not very far from now.
And they've
So-
already contacted Eversource.
Are there permits? Have they filed for permits?
No, they have not filed. They have not filed.
Okay,
it's
so
not-
there are no permits in place yet.
Right.
Okay.
Let
And
me
they may not-
also just say, so that, we can just calm it down just a moment here, that several years ago, there was a talk about selling the property, which is, now I'm totally blanking on, what's the property we have our trail? What's the Langhamer, on the Langhamer property, that property was going to be sold, and we were going to use that money for an open space fund to buy other properties. And what happened is it didn't happen, and it didn't happen because the townspeople said, whoa, wait, stop. We don't think we want that. This is a great open space property. It's something like 70 acres or so. The town owns it. We want to keep it that way. And that is what the town voted for. So I think that there is always a possibility here, no matter what's being done, that the people, and my experience with the people in Ashford is they don't say anything, but when there's a big issue that affects them, and that's what this was, that enough people showed up at the hearing and it was totally shot down. And we ended up putting a trail there, and so it's public land. People can walk on there, can start walking on there and walk over to the other adjacent property in Willington and everything. So that there are many ways to go around all this if it becomes something which is not suited. And from what you've said here, that industrial agriculture of this size is not suited for our town. It's not what our town has ever wanted, ever. Whenever we talk with people, that is not what they want. Yes, they want some business to come into town, of course. They want some economic development, but they don't want 30-foot buildings or 6 greenhouses on an open field.
Well,
So-
I would just, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, Loretta, this is different. This is privately owned land that's overseen by Farmland Trust. And the town may not have the opportunity to do the kind of review or solicit public comment. That's what scares us the most, that this sort of thing could happen with very little input from the town. And we should be, and our commission should be concerned about that.
Well,
Can say something.
I hate to bring this up, but I'm wondering if any one of you have given any thought to retaining counsel, if in fact what you are implying is true, that if the town, because of the way the thing has played out on private land, it seems like it might take someone with deep knowledge of land trusts and all that in and out, because I'm sure the company has legal counsel, to help you sort through what the options are. And you know, certainly as the Conservation Commission, we are all behind you in supporting your feelings that obviously this is not something that would serve a need for the town in that space, maybe in some other space, but it just seems like in order to slow things down, it may take fighting fire with fire instead of fighting fire with swords, which maybe as a commission, we have swords and we can say, well, you know, this is wrong because, you know, it's affecting wetlands, and but that may not even be the issue. And I think that's something that needs to be established.
Christine, thank you for that. I can tell you, speaking for Claudia and us, that all options are on the table. There are certainly, I'm not going to render a legal opinion here, but Steve and Mary and Claudia have equitable property rights for quiet enjoyment of their property in an area zoned residential and agricultural. So absolutely, yes. It's just when that is appropriate, at what juncture, and really what I think we all look for are, you know, God bless volunteers, God bless those who serve us in the role of being an elected official, and we're asked them to do their jobs, to use the process. You know, recently Supreme Court Roberts issued a memorandum report about the federal courts at the end of the year. And he said, ethics is not incidental to what we do, it's fundamental. And I think we see town government, no matter how informal, the same way, that the town owes its citizens a duty of fair due process, full disclosure, and to really, as you said, scrutinize promoters who come with things and have a track record already in Mansfield and other of saying one thing about taxes and then saying another, which still kills us, no business plan, no evidence of any financing, but apparently can get, Melissa, you made this point, us talking now for an hour or so in your private time spun up where apparently no one's ever asked these folks, how does this work economically? How can you sell packaged goods to Whole Greens when they already apparently have Gotham Greens as a supplier, and they're doing it closer to them with less transportation costs, utilities right there, and you propose to build a multi-million-dollar facility in a field. No one's asked them that.
For
So what
indoor agriculture.
for completely indoor manufacturing process. So we're kind of hoping these common sense questions empower the Board of Selectmen, you, the other commissions, to begin asking questions. And then we can all sort out once we get better facts. And we really have to hear from the promoters. You know, that's been kind of a cat and mouse game of who knows what. we know enough to know they're serious about images and hiring people apparently to look into water for them, but never coming outright and saying, here's our project for Ashford. And probably the reason's obvious. They'd like to see what they can get established before they have to really go through that scrutiny, is the only, at least, conclusion we can reasonably draw right now.
Janet, you have a question?
I'd like to point out that just as you can go to the Board of Selectmen and talk when or if the company comes to the planning and zoning or inland wetlands, there are public, speaking times, and it's important to bring up the issue because, everyone is a volunteer on these boards and not necessarily experts in every issue. So if you've done research and you know information, bring it up. It's important. If you have a legal question, the town has attorneys that the boards can ask to investigate. So it's important to, yes, be there and get other people there because the boards do listen to the public. That's their mission.
Thank you.
And you can send a letter and ask it to be put on the agenda and get speaking time.
Well, thank you for your chance tonight on your agenda. And we will certainly provide you with any information you would like. And we appreciate just the opportunity to get this into a brighter light of day and begin to sort out what we have here.
Well, thank you so much. And we may very likely be calling on you again to inform us some more because you gave us an awful lot of information. So,
Available.
yeah, well, I really appreciate your taking the time to do it. And I don't really think there's any disagreement that we need to investigate this more and that from a conservation viewpoint, if nothing else, it raises a lot of questions. And so that as a commission, we have to say there's a lot of questions here that we need some really clear answers to. So I appreciate all the input and all the time. And I'm sure we'll be in touch,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, there are two people on this as the note taker. I don't know. I see one name is Donna, but I don't know your last name or whoever Donna is. And then there's another Bowerset. I assume that's a last name. So if you could just let me know what your names are, I could keep that in the minutes because we keep track of who's at our meetings. And I have all of you, so.
Hey, Loretta, this is Dan and Sabrina Bowerset.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and Donna, can you give me your name?
It's Donna Drash.
Donna, pardon?
Drash, D-R-A-S-C-H.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
Does anyone else have any? Okay, thank you.
No, we're set. Thank you so much
Thank
again,
you.
and we'd be glad
Thank
to provide
you.
you any our information and any questions. We're fully available to you. So thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Loretta, I would ask, how would we communicate with the commission? How best to do that?
Wait, what commission are you talking
What
about?
commission?
Conservation.
How
If
would we?
we want to, you seemed interested in additional information. What's the best way? Would email work to you or?
Yeah, I think that, it seems to me that I don't think anyone here would disagree with our just getting on the next Board of Selectmen meeting, asked to be on the meeting and just say, we do have concerns. We heard a great deal of information about a possibility of a project. And as a Conservation Commission, we have a lot of concerns and we think there needs to be a lot of investigation. I think that that's the least that we can do ASAP on this. Does anyone have any objections to
Nope.
us having do that?
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not asking for you to investigate the specifics of our issues. I think it's a broader question for the commission. How does this affect land use and what we thought was protected land? Questions like that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think the investigation necessarily comes from us. I think
No.
it's important when there is a project that's really huge and has an impact on the whole town, as it seems to me this does, that, the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning, the Inland Wetlands need to do their due diligence to check and see how does that fit or not fit in, and what are some issues. That's all I'm saying.
Right. That's exactly what I would have.
Inland wetlands, regardless of whether it's public lands or private lands, I
Yeah.
believe, and so with planning and zoning, they have to look at what is the impact and all that kind of stuff, so that everyone has their piece. But it seems to me that right now our piece would be to say that there's some concerns here, and I'm particularly concerned about water, and I'm particularly concerned about lighting, and I'm particularly concerned about all these trucks, and I'm particularly concerned about this kind of impact with agriculture on this. How does this affect our local farmers that we've been supporting? Now, the farmers market will be starting its 16th year.
Right.
And so we have really dedicated ourselves to supporting local agriculture. I don't know that I would in any shape or form call this local agriculture. Doesn't hardly seems to fit the bill on that.
And I'm really betting it's not organic. So what about our town? Does our town, our future still exist?
As far as I know, it does.
Yes, yes.
Because it seems to me that would be a really good place to tell about this.
You mean for the people who were here to go and talk with them, or for us to tell them?
Whatever, for our town, our future, the people on that, in that entity, I mean, that's what they're all about, is our town, our future.
Right. Yeah. I've recently listened to our town, our future meeting. I think they're really hurting for membership, and attendance seemed pretty low. But yeah, and I never really understand their relationship with the town. I think they're an advisory board or something, but not even a formal
committee, just like we are. They are an official committee of the town. They have.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, they are.
Good idea.
Tom, at some point you had your hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, my battery was dying on my computer, so I had to take off and go get the charger and plug it in. And now when I'm looking, I'm not moving. But anyways, I had a question for Chris about how these greenhouses are going to be heated. It just looks like a huge energy user. And lighting, like Loretta just mentioned, lighting. I mean, here we are. One of the appeals of this part of the country is that we're in the dark. We have a corridor here of darkness. How will this project affect that? And I just think it's a bad idea all around, though. We need to just get the word out.
Yeah, I can answer a little bit of that, Tom. It's estimated they would use 2 megawatts per day at that. This information comes from sites of similar size. 2 megawatts a day of power, which is pretty significant. In terms of heating, that I haven't seen anything about that, but in the winter, clearly you're going to have to heat it. They do have lighting. I don't know if the lights generate heat, It's alleged that they mitigate the lighting somehow, but I can tell you, I go out in front of my house and the sky is just fantastic where I live. It really is. I think Christine knows firsthand that.
Yeah, you have a telescope even that you bring
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the stars are great. I'm pretty sure that might not be
That would be
true.
gone.
Something like this was put in. So
Someone should write an article for neighbors.
And Steve, this is 24-hour lighting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, who knows? We've read that it mimics daylight to mimic the summer solstice.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So there would be a period where there wouldn't be lighting, but
Not very
Well, except that there's probably 24/7 for packing and receiving and all those other things.
well, and security too.
And security, right. So
Yeah.
regardless of the greenhouse itself, there would be lighting for the factory.
Chris didn't mention it, but we also have concerns about the actual profit. That's why he keeps mentioning business plan. How much can you make from greens? There's some other products that could be grown that might be higher margin, and you might know what those would
Cannabis.
be.
Yeah,
Whatever.
could they convert to those greens
Pretty
at a
easily.
rate?
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Greenhouse is a greenhouse. Yeah, just look at the guy who sells the microgreens at the farmer's market. God, I don't know if he makes any money at all.
Yeah, we'll give you some information. The ag economics person at UConn, who's a professor emeritus, he lives on Browns Road and is a party in the suit there. This guy really did his homework. It's amazing what he came up with in terms of how economically viable these particular projects can be, or actually can't be, without converting to something that's higher profit margin. I think he said, it's cheaper, even with all the shipping, to grow things in the Salinas Valley and ship them east than it is to grow them in greenhouses. Not to mention the energy use and resource use. So whatever. We should probably be done with this.
So I wonder if we could get him invited to talk to Board of Selectmen or something.
He's a really personable guy. I have talked to him. His name's Ron Cotterill, and I think if he would agree, he would be a really interesting guy to have in to talk about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So is our plan then to get on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen and then perhaps have him as a speaker or a spokesperson, as well as you, Steve, and the folks who are directly impacted? Is that our plan?
That sounds like a good plan. Does anyone have any disagreement with that?
I think procedurally what might need to happen is maybe, Steve, if you could put together a short letter to be included on the agenda and include in that you'd like to have input from those two people who talked and this professor. Just get something on the agenda.
For the Board of Selectmen?
You know, the company hasn't come forward with any plans. I think what the Board of Selectmen is addressing at this time is the increasing the tax abatement from $100,000 to $200,000 and changing some of the definitions, which would include non-traditional farming without actually defining what that is, which so those are the issues that they're discussing right now, because the company hasn't come forward, so that's not on
That's right.
anybody's wavelength. I mean, well, it might be on their wavelength, but it's not on the agenda to discuss.
Well, couldn't we just deal with what they are discussing? Because I think those are cogent issues that need to be defined and a plan requested certainly from the company if it's not available. But I think the professor, Steve, that you're talking about could probably address those issues without addressing the entire scenario of the greenhouses themselves.
Sure. So I guess what we'd hope for is that the town and its various commissions would look, maybe rethink their regulations in light of what could be coming. That's the real point. Without an actual plan, like Janet mentioned, there's really nothing to discuss because we'd have to see a proposal, see how it fits on the land, what exactly they're asking for. For all we know, this is just exploratory. The person promoting it has, we know, has made inquiries, but they may need financial backing that they don't have yet. I don't know. We don't know. But again, back to this kind of thing has happened in Mansfield, could happen in Ashford. Is it incumbent upon us to review current zoning regulations, wetlands, whatever applies,
Tax abatement.
tax abatements, those sorts of things? Those, I think, are important discussions that the towns should hold and be aware of, and considerations they should make, because something like this could come to Ashford.
Well, this seems like kind of deja vu to me, when I don't know whether time just kind of goes by for me now. A couple years ago, we were talking about that developer who wanted to build
Off the highway.
that warehouse, and
Right.
and it was impacted wetlands and all of this stuff. Now it was a slightly different scenario, but the same issues came up for that, in the fact that they wanted easements and they wanted changes in height requirements and this and that all of which ultimately became addressed, and the proposal was not okayed. But I don't know that anything was put in place that would that changed what our zoning requirements are. Was anything done after that?
The petitioner in that case asked us to change our zoning regulations, which we did not do, and the public opposition at the hearing was influential in the decision. It wasn't the only issue, but it did make a difference.
So an important point here is that you just have to remember the whole time that agriculture falls under a different set of rules. It's really clear to me, after doing a bunch of digging, that agriculture is, they walk a different route than most other other entities, that lots of things can be done in the name of agriculture that wouldn't be able to be done the standard way, if you will.
So are you saying that it doesn't really fall under planning and zoning in any way?
That may be, it would be interesting. I would encourage you to talk to the zoning enforcement officer. I've done that already, and I was shocked at what I heard. That what you said may be true.
Wait, what that she said?
That
Not
the
be-
rules for agriculture don't fall under planning and zoning, so it's a different system.
No, we have agricultural regulations. They're designed they're designed for the current types of small farmers we have in town. And they're designed to not put undue burdens on these farmers who often aren't, they're struggling or they're not making a lot of money and they're not big operations. They weren't written for large scale farming because that's not what we've had in town.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be applied to large scale farming, these same regs. And like I said, I would encourage you to talk to Mike D'Amato regarding what can be done and how certain agricultural endeavors may be able to avoid being reviewed by PZC.
Okay, well, all right. I think it's about time to end. I think we've had to digest a lot of information tonight.
Sure.
But I'm not sure where Board of Selectmen meeting is. It just happened, right? This last Monday.
On the 18th, yes, there was a meeting. So it's every 2 weeks.
Okay, so in 2 weeks. So what I can do is just get on the agenda, because I think the first step is for us just to say to the Board of Selectmen that, we've heard some things and we have some concerns and we know what happened in Mansfield, which doesn't sound like something that as a conservation commission would sit well for our town, for all the residents. And that we know there was one place that was rejected in Granby, because I know that means a lot what other towns are doing. So I think we can start with that and then ask the Board of Selectmen how much would they like to hear from other, because we know people who have a lot of information for them.
And that Mansfield's getting sued.
Right. So it seems like that's right now, that's the best first step to do, and see where that goes and see what kind of a response we get. And then, because it may be that it should be maybe a special meeting where, the people who came tonight talk and share all their information and invite the public so that more people can hear. Because
and the landowners, maybe the landowners.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's not going to be clearly one way or the other. I think there are going to be a lot of people who say this is really good, and there are going to be people who saying this is really bad. So I think that that's where we're at, and it seems to me that we need to just gather more information and how that impacts on us as conservation people, and individually how we feel about things, and then just move from there.
Sure.
Because we don't even know. I mean, nothing has been submitted yet. No permits have been. Planning and zoning hasn't been approached, or inland wetlands to our understanding. So it's not begun yet. So where we need to be is saying, we have to have heads up and look at all this stuff and what is the implications of all these. If we do things, if we change things, what possibly could happen? You know, and which is what happened with the proposed change of regulations that got voted down at planning and zoning. You know, the person who wanted to, you know, put something like, he didn't even have a plan, but he wanted something like
An Amazon center. But Steve, so, you know, it just seems to me we could use the town of Mansfield and what happened to them and ask the Board of Selectmen, is this something that could happen to us and do we want to mitigate that?
Sure. I'd recommend that if you think that's appropriate, we make a motion to contact the Board of Selectmen. I'm not trying to be too formal, but there's some issues that I think it's important to be formal in that process too.
I move that we contact the Board of Selectmen and ask for clarification on our regulations with respect to agricultural development on private land or something like that.
As it affects conservation in our community.
Okay.
Okay. Who seconds?
A second.
All right. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I'm abstaining. I'm abstaining.
Okay. This
Me
is for the
too.
Board of Selectmen, Janet.
I understand.
Okay, that's fine.
And I'm abstaining too.
Well,
Okay.
then the motion can't pass because we don't have enough people to pass it.
Well, you can vote.
Yeah.
There's
There
four
are-
of us, and we need a majority.
4 out of 6.
4 out of 6.
No, but the majority has to be the amount of people who are on the committee, not, there's 4 people, there's 2 people who are absent.
Hmm.
Well, instead of making a motion, can we just make a recommendation?
Okay. Recommend we contact and get on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen to discuss what y'all said about the regulations as it affects our conservation,
Yeah.
the impact. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Could I say something, Loretta?
Sure.
Can you hear me? I lost all video. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we see TK.
Well, we still see you. We still see TK, so we know it's you, Tom.
Okay, I just want to say one thing real quick. I'm wondering if we would be discussing this at all if Mansfield was not getting sued. I can't help but think that this is Ashford's kind of a fallback plan, and that if Mansfield goes south, they have something that they can immediately dig into and start building.
That's
Well, but
interesting.
Granby already went south, so, you know, there are 2 things that,
Yeah, I can't help but think they just want to find someplace close where they can get in and do all these back door kind of things and that they need to do to line up get everything lined up real quick in a row so that if Mansfield looks like it's not going to happen at all, they can come over here and just bang, bang, bang and get things moving real quick. And we don't want that. We want to do this ahead of time before anything gets formal. So we're ready ahead of them.
Well, I think that's what Steve and Chris and Melissa and Claudia were saying, that they, you know, feel that we need to be prepared. So I think that's what we're trying to do, of alert the people who have some authority. And the bigger authority in my mind is that, you know, people standing up and making statements, because that affects and influences the planning and zoning and the board of selectmen. I know. I don't know much about inland wetlands. I think they're pretty delineated by the rules, the Fed rules, but certainly board of selectmen and planning and zoning listen to what the town people are saying. That's their job. You're supposed to be looking at what the people are saying to you, what the people want, and what's down in the regs, but also changing the regs is that what the majority of people in town want.
Right, I think
So
it's a good
hopefully,
idea to
so
talk to the
hopefully,
selectmen.
pardon, go ahead.
No,
Go
I
ahead,
was gonna
Tom.
say, Lorraine, I think it's a good idea to talk to the selectmen at their next meeting and state, that we, as townspeople, we're concerned about this. And especially, we don't want to see regulations that have been in place for years and years changed all of a sudden by people we don't even know, just so that this project can move forward.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
I think we need to keep in touch with the selectmen.
Yeah, and we also need the regulations to be looked at so they can't be skirted. The ones that are currently in place, so they can't be skirted. Are they solid enough to be what we want?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Any last thoughts?
Just that this company, they may not have contacted planning and zoning or sent any information to you guys, but it certainly sounds like they've been laying a lot of groundwork for making changes in the tax abatement plan and things like that. So there has been some kind of contact.
Sounds like with the Ag Commission.
Yeah,
Well, yes, it's a step-by-step process that obviously it seems that that's what's going on. And I think it's important to think about these things as we look at any sort of change in regulations and zoning and everything. What is the impact? That's the whole point of looking at all these things and seeing what's the large term impact. So I will try and get on the agenda here and we'll see what happens. And I appreciate everybody. We had a long meeting tonight.
Don't go.
Oh. Oh, no, Janet. Oh, right.
We have to talk about our February meeting.
Oh, correct.
Planning and zoning is required by the state to look at affordable housing. It's regs for affordable housing. And there's going to be a presentation on February 28th, Monday. And they're inviting all the stakeholders from town, including the Conservation Commission, about the plan. And then a survey is going to go out, which we're hoping we can get included with sustainable. So I had asked Loretta if we could change our meeting that month so everybody could come to the presentation if they wanted to.
That's on February 28th.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good idea. And what I can do is I can look at my schedule and send out a couple of dates, other dates, probably that week, to see if what would work best for the most people. Is that agreeable to people?
Yeah.
Okay.
sure.
And the other thing is, just so that you know, I did send out a letter of support to Jean Pillow and ECCD because she's trying to get a grant to work on pollinator gardens and stuff as a way of keeping water quality improved. So she thinks it's a long shot, but it's worthwhile. And I think she was impressed by all the people who came to the meeting where the speaker was talking about pollinators, pathways and everything. So she was quite thrilled that the meeting was so well attended and got motivated to try and do this grant. So that's the other agenda item that I forgot to talk about. So
And
I guess that's.
wait a minute, one other thing. I just wanted to, in case anybody
How
doesn't
many one
know,
other things do you have here?
last one. The town office, in front of the town office building is a big box and it has masks in it. And they're boxes of 20 and you can take one for each family member. So
What kind of masks?
they're N95.
With
They're,
over the head, around the head?
I think they're ear loops.
Oh,
Yeah, they're NIOSH though. I
Okay.
have some.
Then they're KN95 if they're ear loops. Probably.
They're NIOSH certified.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
Well, they say N95, but
Okay, cool.
I haven't opened the box yet. They are a very attractive teal color.
Yeah, well, whatever.
I was
Yeah,
worried about that.
Yeah, it's one mask per family member, right? Not one box.
No, one box.
One box.
Really?
They're sealed.
How many per box?
There's 20 in the box, in a box.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And it's
Yeah.
on the porch or inside?
It's
It's
on
right
the
on the porch.
table on the porch, so you don't have to go inside.
I don't know if they have any of the test kits left, because I think the test kits were one box. That was 2 tests
I
per
think
family.
the test kits were for immune compromised people, not
All right.
others.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Well, thank you, Janet.
Good night.
All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Wow. Wow. Oh, there we go.